bulk of the work that I think you're most known for, and the focus of your work, as well as Stan Monteith is documented some of this as well, focuses on the impact of Cecil Rhodes, a man that I understand in my limited knowledge of him at the center of the British imperialism movement, and I believe had the country of Rhodesia, if I remember, which is now Zimbabwe, named after him, for example, was very influential on the African continent. How did his specific bold mission create a modern movement that was expanding and realizing an elite-driven world domination goal? And what comprised his goals, the strategy he had, and the end game of this plan?
Well, he was one of the early non-nationalistic, exclusively nationalistic, more of what you would call globalist. I focus on him a lot because people in the past had not. And the reason for that is the unique availability of material from Bill Clinton's mentor, Professor Carroll Quigley, who actually loved these guys. He wrote a book in 1966 called Tragedy and Hope, and that word hope was these people. He considered them the hope of the world. The people were just sort of floundering around, and they needed to be guided. It was a follow-up of the noblesse oblige. You had back in feudal times, the nobility would guard the people, the serfs, the peasants, the oafs, and so forth, in exchange for various crops and other things that would be given to the royalty and the king. But then what you had was this nobility of money. Great wealth was accrued to individualists, at first banking and then industrialists and so on. And so what you had with Cecil Rhodes was a little different from in the past. In the past, you had mentioned wars. You would have nationalistic wars, Spain against France, France against Germany, something like that. But Rhodes, what he did, he had a mentor called John Ruskin, and Ruskin on his grave, which I put in my book, The Globalist, has a swastika, which was pre-Hitlerian, a power symbol of the elite, the Aryan race. And this comes down, as you mentioned, from Plato early on. Solon, famous Greek philosopher in the 500s BC, had gone to the priests of the Temple of Isis in Sais, S-A-I-S, Egypt, who told him about Atlantis and how there were 7 civilizations, 6 were destroyed, but the Aryan survived and wound up in Shambhala, Indian subcontinent, and so forth. And so that's why you'll find people like Rudyard Kipling, who was a member of Cecil Rhodes' Trust, emphasizes a lot of his works there, the book Kim and Jungle Book and so forth from that area. And Rudyard Kipling, in my book Secret Records Revealed, I put the cover of one of his books, and it has swastikas on it, this sort of elitist symbol there, superior people. And that flowed, it wasn't just a racial superiority. It was, at the time, evolution was on the ascendancy, Darwin in the middle 1800s. And so they picked up on all of these principles. There's social Darwinism. If there is a competition among species, then there would be a competition among men, what peoples are superior. But Rhodes took it one step further with his Society of the Elect, because it not only included British, Scotch, Irish, English, Welsh, it included, in addition, the Commonwealth, which you could understand, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and so on. But it also included people from Germany, which would be interesting later on, given the wars that were fought. He was interested in establishing this elite, and it was a secret society, as he said, to take the government of the whole world and absorb the wealth of the world. They would use their great wealth, and as you indicated, in the southern area of Africa, in Rhodesia, for example, he would sort of co-opt the diamond and gold mines, using basically this slave labor for what he venture would be a expanded British influence, and he had originally thought that they could do it alone. It would simply be part of the British Empire, but then he was told by Lord Rothschild that if this thing was to succeed, he would have to include America and so on. So he developed this larger larger notion. And the conspiracy as such was to last about 60 years. And he felt by that time he'd have enough people in key positions all around the world that he wouldn't need a conspiracy as such anymore, as something hidden, but it would be changed, morphed into a network of like-minded globalists. And the eventual result of all this was to be a world government under the control of the elite.
That's right. And these aren't just suppositions people are making. These are explicit goals that have been written down.
Sure.
You have the documents. They're written, they've been verified, they're not questioned. Not only directly from Rhodes, but from the people in his inner circle, people even on the fringe, people who were leaders in the arts, academia, things like this. I remember even reading some things, I believe, in Dr. Stan's book about Winston Churchill and H.G. Wells writing to each other about the secret plans that were underway that they would need to talk about offline and things like this. And the circle is amazing.
Churchill wrote to Wells. Wells was asking him something, and Churchill wrote back he couldn't talk about these certain things outside of the secret circle. And they wanted to penetrate various areas of life. They primarily, many areas, but primarily politics, economics, journalism, and education. They wanted to do that. Now, they would cooperate with others. They would cooperate with the intellectual elites of that time, which were the Fabian socialists in the late 1800s. They would cooperate with this sort of American branch, Skull and Bones, to which the Bush family, most of them belong, but not just that type. You have John Kerry, a liberal Democrat who would belong to that. So the point is these elites are not strictly conservative or strictly liberal. Their primary goal is power and control. They really don't care about left and right and so forth. And once again, that's why you will find in the tomb, as it's called, at Yale University, where Skull and Bones meets, a fair number of swastikas around. Remember, this is pre-Hitler. Hitler simply picks up on this. He's sort of a Johnny-come-lately to this move.
Okay, and also I think what we'll find, he served basically as a tool for their use, correct?
Sure. Yeah, they make people, break people, fund them, get them to rise to power to perform some useful function. And when they're no longer of use, they'll have some sort of revolution or whatever. Actually, Skull and Bones, William Whitney was a big money person in the late 1800s. And his contribution to this effort was, he said, what we'll do, our sort of branch of this elite is will contribute heavily to both major political parties and then alternate power so the unwise or ignorant public thinks it has a choice when it really doesn't.
Wow. And this is documented.
Sure.
I mean, anything you've said, I've always seen you've got the hard documents. So they admit this is a strategy that they started with a two-party system approach to have sort of a facade of change while you got people on both sides working the plan.
Yeah, in fact, Quigley loved that. That's what he liked. He said you ought to be able to, in his book Tragedy and Hope, he said you ought to be able to kick the rascals out without changing anything serious. There'd be minor changes, but anything of great importance to the power elite wouldn't really change. For example, you would have George H.W. Bush, president from 1988 to 92, and when Bill Clinton was running against him in 92, one of the things he was criticizing Bush for was his support of most favored nation status for communist China. He says, they're violating human rights, this is horrible, I will do away with this when I become president, so on and so on. He made a big issue of it. Then as soon as he became president, Bill Clinton, Lloyd Benson from Texas, as Secretary of Treasury, read him the Riot Act, and he changed and said, well, yeah, okay, I'm for that too, most favored nation status for China. So the point is, a lot of these people are puppets who you see up front. Various presidents are puppets for these people. They vet them, as the word that you used early on, when they're young people in their careers. They fund them, see that they become members of city council and then the state senate or whatever. And by the time anybody reaches the highest echelons, they pretty well are bought.
And you can usually look for the train of money and the other contacts that have been made at key parts of their life. Even our current president, as I understand, has that trail. Special
sure.
contacts with Rockefeller, in others at key times that sort of lifted up and their career took off.
Yeah, and you owe them. And oftentimes they love people that they can hold something over. Maybe they've done something in their past that they can always expose if the person gets out of line. And so they know who their boss is.